In the tangled world of power, influence, and ambition, there exist moments when even the most self-reliant figure must confront the uncomfortable truth that no great ascent is ever achieved alone. This dynamic sits at the heart of Dealing with the Devil, Tommy's alliances with Churchill and the Crown, a story shaped not by convenience but by cold-blooded calculation, moral ambiguity, and the relentless pressure of a world where dominance is fleeting and vulnerability is fatal. Told through a tone inspired by the flowing, narrative-driven, cinematic style of magnates media, particularly the rhythm and psychological depth found in stories like The Genius of Coca-Cola, this documentary-style essay explores how one man's uneasy partnership with institutions far more powerful than himself reveals a universal lesson, that strategic alliances, even with rivals or ideological opposites, can be the key to survival and long-term victory. Every powerful figure reaches a crossroads where personal morality collides with the demands of ambition, and for Tommy, this moment came when the forces shaping Britain were on the brink of transformation. The aftermath of a brutal war had left political, military, and aristocratic power fractured across the nation, but it also created a rare opportunity for those clever enough to navigate the chaos. Tommy recognized something that most men in his position refused to accept, that raw independence is an illusion, and that the true architects of influence are those who understand how to negotiate with giants. Churchill and the Crown represented exactly that, institutions steeped in tradition, leverage, and authority, capable of bending the direction of history with a single decision. But they also faced their own vulnerabilities, relying on unconventional actors to achieve goals that clean-handed politicians could never publicly acknowledge. It was here, in this shared space of necessity and ambition, that Tommy stepped forward and offered something they needed: access, intelligence, and an unflinching willingness to operate in shadows where government hands could not afford to be seen. The alliance was never built on trust. If anything, it thrived because trust was impossible. The Crown saw Tommy as a tool, useful, temporary, and expendable. Churchill viewed him as a middleman capable of navigating environments too volatile for bureaucrats. And Tommy, fully aware of his role in their eyes, crafted a relationship that remained transactional yet symbiotic. He understood that proximity to power grants a kind of armor, a buffer between survival and destruction. But he also knew it came at a price, forcing him to balance the interests of institutions whose motives rarely aligned with his own. This partnership was not born from admiration, loyalty, or ideological alignment, but from a recognition of mutual convenience. It was the kind of arrangement where every handshake carried the echo of a threat and every shared goal concealed an ulterior motive. This was not friendship. It was calculus. What made this alliance extraordinary was the psychological strain it imposed on all involved. Tommy represented a type of power that Britain's upper classes could neither fully control nor entirely eliminate. He was both their instrument and their liability. A man whose growing influence threatened to blur the line between state authority and personal empire. Yet this tension only deepened the connection. Churchill and the Crown required someone who could traverse the underworld of political extremism, foreign influence, and domestic unrest, regions of society where official figures could not tread without risking scandal. At the same time, Tommy needed their legitimacy, their protection, and their ability to provide doors that could not be opened from the outside. This uneasy blend of danger and necessity created a narrative shaped by parallel ambitions, institutions seeking stability, and a man seeking autonomy. The financial implications of these partnerships were profound. By aligning with powerful institutions, Tommy gained access to resources, intelligence networks, and political protection that allowed his operations to expand far beyond what street-level maneuvering could achieve. These alliances gave him leverage in economic negotiations, especially when dealing with foreign markets, industrial leaders, and rival organizations seeking to outmaneuver him. Government influence provided him with a kind of shadow capital, the ability to move freely, to negotiate from a position of strength, and to solidify ventures that would otherwise be crushed by regulation or competition. The Crown and Churchill, conversely, benefited financially and strategically from Tommy's growing economic footprint. His ventures created stability in regions where political unrest could threaten government interests, and his control over workers, industries, and communities allowed the state to indirectly manage sectors it struggled to reach through conventional means. Their partnership was, at its core, a circulation of power. Tommy gained institutional backing, while the Crown and Churchill gained influence over areas outside their formal control. Yet with every benefit came a corresponding risk. Aligning with the state meant inheriting its enemies, stepping into conflicts that were far larger and far more dangerous than anything Tommy had faced before. Nationalists, extremists, foreign agents, and competing aristocratic interests suddenly viewed him not simply as a criminal entrepreneur but as an extension of the establishment. These alliances placed him at the center of a web of expectations, obligations, and political agendas that demanded constant maneuvering. Each decision became a gamble involving public perception, government pressure, and the fragile balance of power that could turn allies into adversaries overnight. And beneath it all simmered the moral question: had Tommy sold pieces of himself, ideals, loyalties, integrity, in exchange for the promise of safety and influence? Despite these heavy consequences, the alliance endured because all parties understood that their fates were intertwined. The crown could not afford to lose someone who understood how to manipulate the shifting landscapes of crime, politics, and economics. Churchill needed a man capable of pushing boundaries without invoking scandal. And Tommy recognized that without the backing of institutions older and more powerful than any individual, his empire would eventually crumble under the weight of its own ambition. The cooperation became an intricate dance, each side stepping carefully, each guarding secrets, each benefiting from the other's existence. It was diplomacy conducted through whispers, threats disguised as opportunities, and agreements forged in moments where the line between necessity and self-preservation disappeared. In the end, the story of Tommy's alliances with Churchill and the Crown is not simply about political maneuvering or financial gain. It is a study of strategy, psychological endurance, and the uncomfortable